From WHYY and Billy Penn, it is Hittin season. Hey there, podcast pals. I'm John Stolnis from The Good Fight and Billy Penn. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at John Stolnis. Coming up, winter meetings are here, and the Phillies did get busy on day one. They went out and they got themselves reliever Jordan Romano. Will he be the new closer? We'll talk about the addition, the pros and the cons. We're going to talk about, obviously, the big Juan Soto signing. That's the big news coming out of the winter meetings here. Late on Sunday night, the Mets sign Juan Soto, or at least the reports come out. We'll go over a couple other winter meetings notes. And at long last, Dick Allen is elected into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. So we'll get into all that stuff here on a jam-packed edition of Hittin season. Joining me, my co-hosts on this fine podcast, Justin Klugh and Liz Roscher. Elizabeth, you know, from Yahoo Sports. You can follow her on X and Blue Sky at Liz Roscher. Liz, how are you feeling on this fine Monday evening?
I need to ask how we feel about, excuse me, the phrase lost to free agency. Like when a player's like, we've lost this player to free agency. I don't like that.
He is dead. He's died to free agency, unfortunately.
He's gone.
He lived a certain number of years with this team, and now he has died as someone who is identifiable with this team. So he has died to himself a little. Now he lives on in a new place.
Well, I was just thinking,
what is the issue with the phrase?
I was just going to say, like, the Phillies didn't lose anyone to free agency. They chose not to retain people. Like, unless the guy says, no, I don't think so. Like, I don't know. Did the Phillies make an offer? I don't think they lost people to free agency. I was annoyed with that today because, you know, you can't lose someone like Jeff Hoffman to free agency unless you want to.
Don't you
right?
lose Jeff Hoffman to free agency because he has this unexpected leverage that it might not have been assumed that he would have, but he has this career year in his free agent year. Wouldn't he want to go into free agency?
Oh, sure. It sounds to me like the team is just like, well, whatever. We can't do anything about it. He's gone. Goodbye. I just hate that.
I guess there's some instances where if you're like the... I was just saying, if you're like the Yankees and you had like the highest offer for Juan Soto and he chose the Mets, I think you could reasonably say you've lost Juan Soto. But I think it only really applies if it's a player that was on your team and he leaves for another team in free agency. And then I can just say, yeah, he's lost from your roster. Like you're losing that player from your mix. You're right. You had an opportunity to perhaps not lose that person, but yeah, I don't feel strongly about it.
I think I agree with Liz that it's the passive voice that's the issue here. That they're acting like he just is gone and there was nothing we could have, when in fact, like, okay, this was obviously a process and there were conversations had or not had that led to this result. It wasn't like it just happened and you were helpless watching. Yeah, I totally understand that.
Thank you. It is the passive voice. As someone who did not go to journalism school, I have a tough time identifying it and talking about it. Usually I talk about it like, I hate this. What is this? Why are they talking like this? This is not how people should write words.
That just sounds like you're reading, most journalism at this point.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Thank you.
We've fallen a bit over the last few years or so. Justin Klugh, however, not losing a step at all, writing for Baseball Prospectus and Billy Penn. Also, you hear the podcasts Absolutely Hammered and The Dirty Inning over on the Hittin Season Patreon. Follow him on Blue Sky at Justin Klugh. Justin, how are you doing, pal?
So I've been on calls lately, and I'm a background blurrer. I don't know what your habits are, your Zoom routine is, but I'm always got the blurred background.
Oh, you blurred your background. I did that when I didn't have a good setup behind me for a few things, and it's still not good, but it's better than nothing. But yes, I blurring. Got it. Yes.
So you guys can see behind me, and you probably haven't noticed, but this artwork has shifted in the past couple weeks as we've discovered this painting right here that I'm now accurately pointing at. That is a framed painting of Chase Utley by some artist that we just discovered in a store somewhere. And so I'm sitting on this call today with my background blurred, and the conversation veers towards the Juan Soto signing. And I don't know how it works. I'm not a technology person, but obviously a human face is going to be detected through the blurring technology. And when I tell you that this thing exclusively, none of this, you got the Fanatic up here, you got Harry's over here, there's faces up here, but just Chase Utley and just the outline of his body and head came through. Not the whole frame, not the rectangle, just the part of it that's him. Started flickering, coming through clearly through the blur, and then stayed on through the rest of it. I think probably I'll say till the end of the part of the conversation that was about Juan Soto, which to me says that this is a sign of some kind.
Well, the painting's alive.
This was like a hand on the shoulder from another world saying, "Hey, look, yeah, they got Soto, but like, come on, like
it's gonna be okay."
Like it's Chase. Right. I know Chase Utley is alive. I want to make that clear. I'm aware of that. But you know that doesn't mean his spirit cannot extend through the artwork hanging on my wall.
We are off to a very interesting start here on this episode of Hittin' Season, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get into the Jordan Romano signing, I did want to mention that for the second year in a row, this fine podcast, Hittin' Season, is a finalist for 2 end-of-year awards for the Sports Podcast Group. We are a finalist for Best Baseball Podcast and Best Team Podcast. And I also believe, Justin, if my eyes weren't deceiving me, was The Dirty Inning also back as a nominee for Best Baseball Podcast? Did I read that right?
It absolutely was. Did you also read the part of the email where they said, please wait until December 10th to reveal that this has happened?
So I should probably take down those tweets.
I mean, I mentioned it on Twitter, on Blue Sky as well, but I'm sure it's fine.
By the time everyone hears this,
disqualified.
Oh no, you mean we won't win? I can't believe it.
I feel like the third year in a row. Wow.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
to answer your question, yes, The Dirty Inning was also nominated, and I'll happily go down with you, John, if they
Thank you.
They
well,
come
this
knocking on our
podcast
doors.
isn't going to air until the 10th. Like, this isn't coming out until Tuesday morning.
That's
the
true.
Tweets, unfortunately,
That you sent.
I can't reel them back in, everyone. I
With
apologize.
So many of our listeners is so dedicated. We love all of you for seeing that and immediately going to try and vote. And just coming back being like, there's nothing there.
Yeah, they didn't load the page yet. Now it's making sense why they didn't want us to say anything.
Did you wonder why perhaps everyone was like, our website's not built yet when you try to send them to vote?
That's on me. That's on me.
Those people aren't going back, all right? They're like, I did this once. What are they going to, I got to go to this website again? This half-built website? Feel like an idiot all over again? No.
It is hard to
David
believe.
Sampson's podcast.
It is hard to believe we didn't win last year. It really is. So, yes, we did fall short a year ago, but we are intending to win this year. Now that I think by the time you hear this, the site will be up. We need your vote. It's a voting thing, so a link to the vote can be found on our billypenn.com/Hittin' Season landing page. At some point, we'll get that up there, and it's also on the Hittin' Season Instagram, or the Billy Penn Instagram account at WHYY, and all of our X and Blue Sky accounts. Vote early and often, just not too early, because they won't let you vote, like if you tried to vote today. All right. Let's move on to something a little bit more competent than my promotional abilities, and let's talk about the Phillies signing a late-inning reliever, guys. It looks like they may have signed their late-inning right-handed replacement of Jeff Hoffman and or Carlos Estevez. Jordan Romano, former Blue Jays closer, signs a one-year deal worth a little bit more than $8 million. 32 years old in April. He was really good with the Blue Jays from 2020 to 2023, specifically from 21, excluding the pandemic season. 21 to 23, those 3 seasons, racked up 95 saves for the Blue Jays, had a 2.37 ERA. That was the 7th best ERA in baseball among qualified relievers during those 3 years. Struck out 30.3% of batters he faced, walked 9.2%, 42% ground ball rate. One of the most effective relievers in baseball until last year. Last year, on and off the injured list due to inflammation in his right elbow. He only made 15 appearances, had a 6.59 ERA, only struck out 21% of batters faced. He hasn't pitched since late May, but the Phillies said that they had him for a physical. They saw a video of a bullpen session for him. They're confident in his medicals, and if he had hit the market like he was like he had another season last year, like he had the previous few seasons, he would be making top dollar on the free agent market. So the Phillies are hoping that this is a clean bill of health, that this guy can go back to being one of the most effective closers and or late inning relievers in all of baseball here in 2025. You know, I don't know if this is the only move they make. I don't know that I feel like it's quite enough, but this, Justin, this could be a move that ends up being a brilliant signing, right? I mean, there's a path to this being an incredibly smart Dave Dombrowski move. I've got to be, I think we all as fans need to be patient. It's day one of the winter meetings. This is the first move out of the gate, and the Phillies did fill a need here. What's your take on the signing?
First of all, yes, I think telling people they need to be patient, they will. I can hear them.
It's going over
patient.
Well. I've tried it on Twitter today. It's going over real well.
Right.
I'm having a lot of success.
I think you're echoing the general response here that, like, well, if this is the only thing, but also, sorry, that was not you I was mocking, but just the general reaction of, yeah, if this is the only thing that I'm going to be disappointed. Keep in mind, all of this is happening in the shadow of the Juan Soto deal, which is the biggest deal of the offseason and in some ways of all time. So everything is going to look very small, especially here in the next couple of days, which is why it's really funny that when the Phillies finally did something, they did it now. But it is the winter meetings. This is when things happen. The only reason to go cheaper here, and by cheaper I mean rather than hitting free agency and just scooping up the best relievers available, and instead going with a guy like Romano, who's coming off a year where he had all these injury concerns, is investing in this bounce back candidate is because you believe, based on your evaluations, that he will bounce back. The Phillies, I assume, are under the impression this guy is going to be the good version of a pitcher that has been seen before, because otherwise the only reason to do that is because you are too scared of the financial costs of improving, and that's just not the Phillies anymore. I mean, I feel this is one of the first times I feel like we can just come out the gate and say this team didn't sign Jordan Romano because they were like, well, I don't want to spend a ton of money on anybody else. They did it because they looked at a guy who is a premier position for a president of baseball ops to look at and be like, yeah, this is a guy who's got a great track record. He's coming probably cheaper because of his success getting derailed last season with an impingement on his elbow. And there's no reason to think that, having recovered and having had him in for a physical, that he can't be the kind of reliever he was when he came into 2024 and had the second most saves in the past two seasons of anyone in baseball. He was right on his way to passing Tom Henke at the top of the Blue Jays closer saves lists and everything. He was on track. There's no reason
Tom
to think.
Henke reference, by the way. As an 80s guy, I'm thrilled with that. Nicely done.
I thought you would like that. I thought that would buy me a couple more seconds, another 30 seconds of talking.
No, Liz, what do you think? No.
Nuts. No, you're going to like this even better, actually, because this is, with two strong pitches he can go to, and he's got this great ability to get hitters to chase and everything. There's no reason to think that guy's not still in there. So, that being the case, I don't think we have to be too disappointed in this. And they have said, yeah, he's not going to be the closer necessarily, but he'll get plenty of late inning opportunities and opportunities to save. And I do think that kind of means, we're going to probably look into, I would be very surprised if they didn't bring in another reliever to kind of join this mix of good relievers we've seen. But the last thing I want to say about Romano is that, and this is a message directly to the Phillies broadcast team. Just, you guys can have this for when April rolls around and it's time to talk about it. On April 20th, 1993, the Phillies and Padres played a game into the 14th inning. You remember this game? You do. It's on the yearbook, the very famous 93 yearbook. It's the one where Kruk hits the walk-off home run in the 14th.
Oh, yeah, just after midnight.
After midnight. Yeah. Right after midnight, right after the shank of the evening, Richie Ashburn and everything. The Fanatic was dancing with the guys in the crowd and everything. Yeah. So they go and they win that game, and they're sleeping it off the next day. And the next day, Jordan Romano was born.
Wow. That hit like a freight train there at the end. I wasn't ready for that. Yeah.
I thought everyone would like that twist.
Very nice.
I thought you were going to say Jordan Romano's dad was the ball boy or something like that. I wasn't. You just okay.
I had absolutely no idea where you were going. None.
No, me either. No, but you delivered.
Anytime a guy's birthday is in 93 and it's during the baseball season, I look up what the Phillies were doing on that day.
I think that's a solid reflex. I like it. All right, so Liz, this is a guy who comes in with some, maybe a red flag, maybe not. I guess the question is, how much do you trust the Phillies and their medical team and what they see? And Caleb Cottom, who is going to be a guy who, is going to take a role in trying to make sure that this guy is going to be up and at him. And so if it all works out, again, I think it's a brilliant move because it's a 1-year deal and it's not an expensive deal.
It's a 1-year deal. It's a cheap deal. And excuse me, it gives the Phillies a lot of options because they're not going to feel like they have to keep him if it doesn't go well. But I mean, I trust the Phillies. I think both of you trust the Phillies as well when it comes to these types of guys. They're not reaching for him because he's cheaper, as you said. They're reaching for him because they think they can do something with him. They think, they can help him get back to where he was if he's not already there. And I think that's great. It's a sign of a healthy franchise that, they're willing to, that's been a signature, a hallmark of Dave Dombrowski's rule, his reign at the Phillies, is that, he's not afraid of a project, not a huge project, but he's not afraid to take on someone with a little bit of risk. And in this case, there's actually quite little risk considering they're spending less than $8 million on him for a 1-year deal. Like, this was very good. I have written in our Slack window when you talked about this deal, I'm like, well, I can't hate it, but I don't have to love it. And that was hours ago. And since then, I've refined my point of view. And I it just feels out of place today with the Mets doing that. And then like the Yankees come out and being so obviously desperate and sort of sad. Brian Cashman talked at the winter meetings and it was all, we're not going to go out and spend all that money that we should have spent, that we were going to spend on Juan Soto. Don't expect some kind of big party. And I'm just
why get people excited now?
Yeah, why?
No,
I mean, the guy that they all loved who helped them get to the World Series last year just left. Like, why make them happy in any way?
I love that. I love that we lost Juan Soto. I will now hold a press conference to announce that we will not be having a party. And like all these reporters and Yankees fans are like wearing little hats and have streamers and like, aww.
Yeah, we're not going to go out and sign.
We're not going to
go out and sign a bunch of guys. We're not going to do the fun things. I said on Blue Sky, I think that, the Yankees are sort of in a downturn that it's been a while, if ever, that we've sort of seen them down bad like this. Because what's interesting is we'll get to see this season after the Yankees being we're about to talk about Juan Soto, but after the Yankees being so publicly snubbed because Juan Soto apparently turned down a deal. Do the Yankees continue to hold that, hold the place as the sterling baseball franchise, the one that everyone compares everything to? My guess is probably yes, because people are lazy. But
well, I think the Dodgers have usurped the Yankees as the model, as like America's baseball team. But the Yankees certainly haven't gone Dallas Cowboys on us. They're still a relevant organization. But you're right; it's not like
the
every
season hasn't
baseball
started yet.
True, but I mean, it's not like when you're, in this 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, kids just wanted to play for the Yankees, right? Their dream is to play for the Yankees, even if you didn't grow up in New York. And I don't think that's the case anymore. It's not like it's not most kids' dreams to go play for the Yankees. They're another team. Now they may have a little bit more of a marquee status for like international players, but for like kids who go to, it's in terms of like a free agent destination, you're not taking the Yankees for less money over another team for more money. That's just, the Yankees don't have that kind of pull anymore. But as far as the Phillies go, it will be interesting to see if this is the only move. I got to say, I like this deal better than if they'd gone out and signed Carlos Estevez to a 3-year, $40 million deal, I think. Or, Jeff, I guess, I'd still like them to go out and get Jeff Hoffman for a deal kind of like that. But I'd rather do this than Kenley Jansen or Kirby Yates or Kyle Finnegan for multiple years, for $12, $13 million a season. So in that way, I like it. But I would like to see, like, if they're still kind of in the market and like big game hunting, Tanner Scott or Jeff Hoffman, I'm all for bringing them in on multi-year deals. I would love to see that kind of fill out the bullpen. I want to read you Dave Dombrowski's quotes on this and tell me what you think, whether or not you think they're done. He says, we feel comfortable where we are. I'm not saying we won't add. I never know what's going to go. I never know that, but we're comfortable where we are right now. I feel if we can help our club in other ways, if there's something out there that makes us so much better, we're still open to that, but we feel good about where we are in our bullpen. And then I read a couple other quotes from, he's talking to the media just about kind of their plans for the rest of the winter meetings and this offseason. And he was talking about regarding Anthony Santander or Teoscar Hernandez, both of whom are qualifying offer free agents. He said, I'm not saying that we wouldn't sign a qualifying offer guy, but yeah, it's always a factor in what you do. I don't really want to give up draft choices and signing bonus money if I prefer. So it doesn't sound like they're going to be at the forefront of signing either one of those two guys. And I would imagine the Juan Soto suitors who fell through are going to overpay for those two guys. And then the last thing, on their outlook for the offseason, he says, you're always looking to get better and to improve yourself. But if you had told me that we went in with the same players we have right now, I still think we would have a good offensive club. We're not going to force things to happen to just get them done. But what were we in? In a lot of spots, top 5 offense in baseball last year. It didn't look like it the last 4 games of the season necessarily, but we have a good offensive team as it is. But we'll continue to try to get better too. And we've had a lot of conversations with clubs, and I'm sure we'll continue to do that over the next few days. I mentioned this on Twitter. I was like, basically, what do you want Dave to say? He can't come out here and say the offense is really letting us down. We need to change things. Because what if you can't? What if you can't sign a free agent? Or, what if, the free agents you want choose to sign someplace else? What if you can't pull off the trade that you think you need in order to, and for the Phillies, it's not a matter of just like one trade and you're fixed. There's like a domino effect on all the different things the Phillies would need to do in order for this all to map out. So I don't look at this as him saying like he really is satisfied with the offense. I'm looking at it as him saying, if for whatever reason things don't go the way I want them to go this offseason, we're going to be happy with the club, because what's the alternative for him to say? It's going to suck and we're going to be worse next year if we don't get the players we want. And I had some people like saying, well, stop gaslighting us with the Dombrowski quotes. That's not what this is. You
can't gaslight people with real quotes. You can't do that. That is the opposite of actually the definition of gaslighting.
Liz, we did that last week. Of course you can. I don't know why you can't remember that. That's all we've been talking about. You sound crazy right now. That's what's going on.
Don't I? Gosh, what was I thinking?
Does anything in there raise your hackles, Justin? Anything perk your ears that he said that you're like, or is it just like, standard Dave speak?
What he's saying, if you're to take him at his word, is this is a really good baseball team. We have no concerns. Everything is cool and fine. The future is totally wide open, and we're looking forward to it because this team is great and will only continue to get better. And you're like, okay, well, great. What he's actually saying between the lines is, I built a good team, and I'm going to do whatever I want to improve it where I see fit. That's it. I mean, that's really, that you strip it down from all the word. That is literally what he's saying. He's like, I don't want anyone to think that we are desperate for anything. He'd be really good at social media, honestly, like as just presenting his organization that, by default has areas where it can improve, and just saying like, yeah, we're great over here. Everything's cool. Maybe, we do some stuff to improve, but we will decide when and if that happens. I mean, that's a great position to be in, but it's also, like you're saying, he's kind of limited in what he can say, but it's also, I think a genuine portrayal of how he views this opportunity this winter, that, yeah, this is, people say they sat on their hands last year, but they locked up to their top 2 starting pitchers, and just because they weren't on the team before doesn't mean that wasn't an important thing to do. And guess what? They went back to the playoffs, which gave them the chance to win the World Series, which they still didn't do. And, that's not because of anything Dave Dombrowski did or the Phillies front office did. So this is the kind of thing you say in this position. We're not desperate. We're not ripping our hair out. But, if we feel like it, we're going to make a move.
And Liz, if he comes across as desperate to make moves now, that hurts him from a bargaining position.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't be desperate. You can't go into free agent negotiations and trade talks looking like you're a desperate guy, desperate to blow things up, right?
Yeah, and there's no reason for him to be desperate.
Right.
The Phillies still have a number of very good players who are very good at what they do. And, as any year goes, it wasn't necessarily the best year for some of them or representative of how some of their careers have gone. But that's why there's a famous saying in baseball, there's always tomorrow, or, there's always next year. There's always next year. Like, that's really what it is. He can't be desperate, because if he goes in looking desperate, they're like, Dave, are you okay? Because you still have Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and Nick Castellanos, and you've got Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, and you've got bullpen guys whose names I'm definitely going to remember sometime. There's a lot to be said for what this team can do, and just because they didn't add doesn't mean they're getting worse. Right. I think that's sort of what everyone is thinking. Like, if they don't add more, which I can't imagine they won't add something else.
That's kind of the important part here, is that they're definitely adding more players, more famous players at different positions. That's going to happen. They're not going to blow up the market or anything, but they're going to do what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
They have to get an outfielder. They know they have to get an outfielder. It's just, what kind of outfielder are we talking about? How big an outfielder? Starting pitching depth. How big is the starting pitching depth? I saw Bob Nightingale say that he thinks the Phillies are the favorites to land Garrett Crochet in a trade this week. So I guess you can cross him off your list.
I was just going to say, I saw literally that the Red Sox, I think, are now the big shot for Crochet. And I'm like, no one knows anything. No organization leaks anymore.
All right, so Nightingale said it was the Phillies. Well, who said it was the Red Sox? Anyone?
Morosi.
Literally anyone? Okay, never
John
mind.
Morosi. It was John Morosi. He said the Red Sox, and he also mentioned that the Brewers, Cubs, Orioles, and Reds were also deep in negotiations, negotiations with Garrett Crochet. Phillies.
That's hilarious. Several of those I'm sorry.
Well, I would get it. They got good farm systems, and he's cheap. That's exactly the kind of guy even like the Brewers would go after, because they got a deep farm system and he doesn't cost anything and he's under team control for forever.
I mean, the Brewers, I can imagine, because they're a team that we wonder, how did they get here every year with their pitching, or how is it happening? Why is that happening? So I can imagine them, but the idea that, I don't know, that the Cubs are going to do this, like they would get him purely just to trade him away in a couple of years. I don't think that's anything that would work, especially since I think they just signed a pitcher, and for me, I'm just like, wow, they signed a pitcher with money. They're definitely done.
I just find myself in the awkward position of wanting what Bob Nightingale says to be true. So I guess what I'm asking is, okay, I'll give you that. Like, let's say this literally doesn't happen, because Bob Nightingale's it a little bit, but do we feel like there's still enough legitimacy to this that he is traded this week?
Yeah, I think he gets traded this week. I think Crochet absolutely gets traded this week. And I do think the Phillies have a good shot. I wouldn't surprise me at all.
Too.
Yeah.
I'm saving this for a later part of the show, but I think they do too.
Okay. Well, we'll get back to that then a little bit later. Let's talk about Juan Soto. He's a Met, everybody. He's going to be a problem for us year in, year out for the next decade and a half, 15 years. And the number blew even our wildest expectations away, $765 million. Did you say $700 million?
I said 15 years and got laughed off the podcast.
Yes, you did.
Do not sit here and say it blew us away. It blew you away.
Yeah, 15 years is surprising to me. I was shocked it was that much more than Ohtani. I was shocked it was that much more money than Ohtani's, 600 some odd million. But it's...
Well, his was 7.
Oh, 7.
But again, with all the deferred money, it was more like real life 480 something or whatever. So that's the thing. None of this is deferred.
No.
This is all real world 765. And there is an opt-out clause after his age 30 season. That's after the 2029 season, so that he could do this all again in 4 years if he wanted to. I don't know why you'd want to. The Mets could void the opt-out by adding an additional $4 million a year to the final 10 years of the deal. So tack on another $40 million, which would max the deal out at $805 million. There's a $75 million signing bonus. The average annual value of the contract for luxury tax purposes is $51 million. The reporting today was that the Yankees' final bid was for 16 years and $760 million. So less total money over more years. The Red Sox reportedly offered 15 years at $700 million. So for all, I mean, I think what happened here, the reason the Phillies didn't even engage, I wonder at what point in the process these $700 million numbers started getting thrown around, because I think it became clear to the Phillies pretty early on that this is where it was going and why they were like, yeah, not doing it. It would have made me uncomfortable, I think, to pay Soto this much money for this many years. I don't know why. It's not my money. Why do I care necessarily? But Liz, let me start with you on this. 15 years, 765. Would you have been comfortable with the Phillies doing that, given the payroll they have, the players are already paying out?
100%. It's fine. I don't care. Again, it's not my money, and what the Phillies look like in 10 years is also not my problem right now. What they look like in 10 years is going to look so different than what we think we think they're going to look. I wouldn't have had any problem spending this money on Juan Soto. I think a lot of the projections about him have been kind of ridiculous, considering how unreliable projections tend to be. They're like, he's an inner circle Hall of Famer or something like that, and I'm like, let's not get over our shoes right now. Let's not get over our skis with all this. But that's what it took to pay him. Steve Cohen would not be outbid. That's why the Phillies didn't get into it, because they did not want to spend that much money, and I think that's fine if they decided not to. I personally would have been fine with it, but Steve Cohen, owner of the Mets, was not going to be outbid by anybody. He is now the hero of this franchise, of the Mets franchise, and he did it by treating the Mets as his plaything. The Mets are his toy, and he's just pouring money into it. And it's cool to see. I hate that it's the Mets, but thankfully, due to the balanced schedule, we don't have to play them as much as we used to. They got to make it through the same gauntlet that the Phillies do. So, I'm fine with it. I'm actually kind of thrilled. This is fun and cool. I know a lot of Mets fans. It's fun and cool for them, because they're usually just the saddest people on the planet, because their team is real terrible.
Yeah, I don't love it. I would rather he had stayed in with the Yankees or gone to an American League team. I don't find it good news.
I do not relish Mets fans' happiness. If anything, I wish they were actually sadder today than they were yesterday, and then for that pattern to continue for every day of their lives.
Yeah. So I mean, I think, Justin, that's kind of where I land on this as well. I mean, yes, I hate that it sounds like poor mouthing a billionaire. But I will say,
yeah, we don't like that here.
Yeah, I know. John Middleton, I think is worth, I saw in Forbes, about $4 billion. Steve Cohen's worth $46 billion. Like,
yeah,
he really can just write a $765 million. I mean, a $75 million signing bonus, a $765 million check. That's just, he can write that, and he won't lose a wink tonight. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, John Middleton couldn't have afforded $765 million when you're worth $4 billion, but certainly not to the point where Steve Cohen would have absolutely no problem with it whatsoever. So do you blame the Phillies for not going to these lengths, Justin? I mean, I know a lot of fans are. A lot of fans are just, it's just, you're a billionaire. You're worth $4 billion. You want to make the team better. You want your damn trophy back. Do what it takes to get Juan Soto. And they didn't really even engage in the process. That's where a lot of the fan base is on this right now.
The years are more alarming to me than the miles. You offer that deal because it's what gets him to New York, and that's all Steve Cohen's thinking about. This is what he dreamed about when he bought the Mets. I think he thought he was doing this with Verlander and Scherzer, and that didn't work out. But this is when he's like, yes, to me, money is nothing. In a way, it's everything, but in this way, it is nothing. And I can hand over a certain amount of this, and not only do I get that guy, but everybody who likes my team tells me I'm wonderful. They call me Uncle Stevie. It's not cringe. It's really cool. It makes me feel great. Also, I get to take him away from the Yankees, and that makes them look stupid and sad and old. Not like the vibrant young Mets who just slapped the Phillies straight out of the playoffs. And then they just kind of kicked the Red Sox to the side in this negotiation thing, too. I mean, all the heat in the Northeast is coming out of Flushing. That's why he makes that deal. Also because Juan Soto, remarkably improves the Mets roster. But to your question about blaming the Phillies or not, I haven't really thought about blaming the Phillies. I haven't really thought about the Phillies as part of this in so long. But I guess we're going to have to figure this out on the fly, because I'm obviously on team, it's not my money when it comes to owners or teams spending on free agents. But I can also see the other side of it where it's like almost embarrassing to be like, all right, Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, JT Realmuto, Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola. You guys couldn't do it. You guys, all of you guys together with all your all-stars and all your silver sluggers and gold gloves, you guys couldn't do it. So now we got to get Juan Soto too. I mean, they really it really shouldn't have had to come to that. And but then I'm also like, just keep adding really great players and your team gets better. But then you look at the Padres, who literally added Juan Soto to an already very stacked team. And it wasn't until he was gone that they started improving. So, like, there are other factors at play rather than just stacking really good players on top of each other. But I also don't want to sit here and say I didn't want him on the team or wouldn't have enjoyed it if he was. So, I don't know. It's a tough place to be. As far as blaming the Phillies, I think the issue here for me is that I just didn't take their courting of him seriously enough to be disappointed by the result.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
That's exactly where I'm landing on this, too. Like, I thought at the beginning of the offseason, the Phillies had a real good shot at signing him. And then you kind of heard where things were heading and the fact the Phillies just weren't engaged at all in this. And one of the things I've heard is one of the reasons that it could be the case is the contract status of Bryce Harper, right? I mean, he's got the same agent as Juan Soto, Scott Boras. And if you sign Soto, or you make an offer of like $600 million to Juan Soto, $650, $700 million to Juan Soto, and he turns you down, or he takes it, well, Bryce Harper's camp can say, you've got this money that you're willing to pay out. I am like the 27th highest paid player in terms of average annual value in baseball right now. He's talked about wanting an extension or a restructure on the back of his contract. He went ahead and signed a contract purposefully that had no opt-outs, because he wanted the Phillies to be able to continue signing people, and he wanted to make this his home. If he had done an opt-out, he probably would have become a free agent, maybe last year, this year, whatever, maybe, who knows, maybe not. But you can see how maybe Scott Boras can go back to John Middleton and say, we know that $600 million that you were going to give to Juan Soto, why don't we take like $150 million of that, or $100 million of that, and tack on some extra years on a Bryce Harper's deal, or restructure it in some way. You could see maybe so not even making an offer kind of it diffuses that from even being a conversation. Is that a little bit crazy?
It does.
Like, am I 4D chessing this thing a little bit?
Maybe a little.
Isn't Bryce Harper wanting to tack more years onto his very long deal a sign that at this point, none of the money's real and this is all just cartoons? By which I mean,
essentially,
what are we really to go? Do we really think the guy who's like 13 years, not enough, is going to walk away at any point? Did he not remove that from his negotiating tactic options at a certain point when he wrote a love letter on Instagram and was like, I'm going to die in my Phillies uniform? And they were like, there's a team in Las Vegas now. That's your hometown. And you play baseball, and that's a baseball team. And he was like, I want to die in my Phillies uniform. And they were like, all right, well, that's great. I guess the season's starting. And he was like, add more years to my deal because I want to die in my Phillies uniform. And you're like, okay, well, it's getting a little alarming now. But okay, so I don't know. I don't see... I guess I laugh at this story every time it comes up because what's the drama? He loves too much. And in some situations, that could be really bad. But in others, in this one, it's just, it's he wants to be here. I assume the Phillies are going to give him what he wants at some point, or is that really?
Yeah, I think so.
So this is more of a.
I think so.
This is more humorous to me than anything else. I guess at the end of the day, it could be a way to cultivate drama, or that could come up, or maybe his feelings change. Who knows? But for now, everything that has made this a subject of conversation is also to me evidence that he's not, he wouldn't use it that way.
All right, let me ask you this. How much better does Juan Soto make the Mets? Let me give you the lineup. Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto probably hits second. Mark Vientos is the everyday third baseman, probably. Brandon Nimmo is going to be your cleanup hitter there, or Starling Marte, one of those two. You got Jeff McNeil, Tyrone Taylor, Francisco Alvarez, Brett Beatty. Is it Batty or Beatty?
Who cares?
Beatty.
Beatty. Okay, yeah, who gives a crap? So there's your lineup. And
Crepe.
the starting rotation right now would be Kodai Senga, Frankie Montas, who they signed this offseason, David Peterson, Clay Holmes, the reliever, who was expected to get big-time reliever money, signed with the Mets for 3 years and $38 million over the weekend. They plan on putting him into the starting rotation, and Paul Blackburn would be the number 5 for the Mets. I look at that lineup. It's a good lineup. It's a very good lineup. Well, that's what I'm going to say. Do I think that lineup is necessarily better than the Phillies lineup? I don't know that I do. I know a lot of those guys were on heaters at the end of the year, but do I know that Tyrone Taylor and Francisco Alvarez and Brett Beatty, even Jeff McNeil to a degree, like, is that a bottom 4 starting lineup that kind of makes you worried? Like, the top 5 is
It
awesome.
should.
That's what I was going to say. Doesn't this lineup kind of die in the middle?
Yeah, it does big time. Like the Mets can't just sign Juan Soto and be like, well, I guess we're done. They've got more to do. Because if you look at their team last year, I believe many of them overperformed. At the same time, while a number of Phillies hitters underperformed. And so if you think about people playing to what is expected of them, their expected ability, they've got Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, a couple of guys who aren't bad, and then just a giant hole in the ground. And so they need to do more in order to scare me. Like, Juan Soto's going to be real annoying to deal with. That we can't deny. But the Mets as a whole need to get better in order to really scare me. Because what happened last year doesn't scare me. That felt otherworldly to the point where Mets fans themselves were really wondering what is happening here. It wasn't we've worked for this for so long and it's finally happening. It's, why is this lineup doing so well? Why?
Yeah, like, they are really counting on Vientos becoming a star. And he's
And I don't
ask
know
about
why.
that. There are people who believe that is he's at least, emerged as a good everyday player at the very least. But yeah, there's people who believe Mark Vientos is a star, and I haven't looked into it enough, but I wanted to ask that. Like, I know there are people who are coming off that playoff run thinking, yeah, that's another guy. Like, check that box. And I don't think that's crazy, but I'm also curious at what laid out before us is like sterling evidence that Mark Vientos is going to play at the level that they think. But because you guys are right, Nimmo was a non-factor for most of last year until close to the end. Brett Beatty was a bust. Francisco Alvarez was famously not hitting, and Jeff McNeil hurt his hand a month before the postseason, and he was done. So yeah, I mean, this and Marte is also now another year older. How old is Starling Marte? My question is, which
is he not 38 or 39? I don't know.
Which lineup has more star power, the Phillies or Mets? And how do we define star? Like, is Brandon Nimmo a star?
Well,
no.
He's not a
Can't
star.
live in that world.
I mean, the Phillies, I think the Phillies have more star power, so to speak, but it depends. It depends on the bottom of the lineup. I mean,
yeah.
What is
and star power is different than like effectiveness or offense or anything, just to be clear.
JT Realmuto is a star, but what does he have left? Like, is he still providing you star production? Bryson Stott.
Fast.
He's a fast catcher,
Yes,
so
he
that's
is.
fine, but he shouldn't be a number 5 hole hitter, that's for sure. Nick Castellanos is a big name, had a good playoffs last year. I don't know what we're getting from him next year. I don't know what we're getting from Bryson Stott. Who knows if Alec Boehm is going to be here, but you needed like Boehm and Stott and Realmuto, those guys to play, and they could never figure out center field. Brandon Marsh didn't have a good season, especially in the last 3-4 months of the season. So, I mean, I look at the bottom of the Mets lineup, and it reminds me a lot of the bottom of the Phillies lineup. There's some names on there that really should give you a full, lengthy lineup, but it just didn't work out that way. Dave Dombrowski saying we had a top 5 offense. I don't think he really believes that in the way that he's saying it, because he saw the up and down nature of the lineup. He saw how easy they were to pitch to at different points of the season last year. He knows the flaws that the Phillies lineup has. I still think the Phillies lineup is probably a better lineup than the Mets with Juan Soto in it. I think it's closer. I think it's definitely closer, because I do see a path to Vientos. He really was starting to come into his own at the end of last year. So we'll see. What does Marte have left in the tank? We'll see. They're losing Pete Alonso probably. So you're losing a big power bat in the middle of that lineup. I don't know where the power is coming from in that lineup.
I was like, who's missing? Somebody's missing. That's right. Alonso's gone. I think, and I asked Liz this, that the Yankees should sign Pete Alonso, and I don't even think they should really even think about it that hard. I think that would be a funny little swipe back at Flushing, just one last jab.
Yeah.
And they have the opening. Rizzo's gone. So, stick him in there. People won't even notice.
And I'm looking at the Mets starting rotation. I think the Phillies, obviously, even as it is right now, the Phillies starting rotation is way better than Senga, Montas, Peterson, Holmes, and Blackburn. Montas and Holmes are huge question marks in the starting rotation.
Yeah, and I think that's an area where either the Mets will be okay moving forward with actually, I think that is the case, that they now see themselves, like we've been talking about the Phillies, a place where relievers can come and become starters, or struggling starters can come and become better starters and just find their way, the way that you saw with like Sean Manaea and Peterson last year. Severino's the other one. Who, by the way, signs with the A's they were talking about because the A's were trying to get better, but because they had a certain minimal amount of money they had to spend, or there would be a grievance filed by the MLBPA. So that's Luis Severino's signing this winter. That's pretty fun. But in any case,
Sacramento.
I think that that rotation could, that's an area to exploit. They might be okay going forward with question marks instead of big free agents pitching wise, because hey, we signed Juan Soto. That can be their response to so much moving forward in the next couple of months. Hey, we signed Juan Soto. It was Soto. Hey, shut up, Soto.
And they also might not be done. They might continue to add starting pitching, but they've added 2 starters, so they might be done with the starting rotation. We'll see. Couple other quick winter meetings moves. Like I mentioned, the Mets signed Clay Holmes. They're going to use him in the rotation. The Orioles signed Tyler O'Neill to a 3-year, $49.5 million deal. That's $16.6 million average annual value. He is one of the outfield free agent targets that had been most linked to the Phillies, I think, by like MLB trade rumors and some of the other prognosticators out there, mostly because he did not have a qualifying offer attached to him. So that was a guy who seemed like a big power bat, had some swing and miss, but didn't chase, walked a good deal. He's going to the Orioles. The Giants signed Willy Adames to a 7-year, $182 million deal, $26 million average annual value. And the Dodgers signed Michael Conforto to a $17 million contract for 2025. And Blake Trinan gets 2 years, $22 million at $11 million a year. Liz, any reaction to any of those signings at all? That little hodgepodge of names I just threw out at you?
I think that Giants contract is one of the biggest they've ever given out, if not the biggest.
Somebody asked us to address that and ask, like, what are the Giants, what are they doing? Because they're always like coming up short on free agents
I got thoughts.
And like content to sit there, but then suddenly they whip out a deal like this for Willy Adames, and you're like, what's that about?
I think some of it is that Buster Posey's now in charge, and that's a sentence we're going to say and have to live with. I don't know why he's there, but he's there, and I think that's probably him, because the Giants have never given out a huge contract, and they haven't done much. You know, I don't know if they have a plan. It's easy to see
the correlation there for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if they have an actual plan going forward. They just sort of, and that's probably why they've got Buster Posey in, because it was the Farhan Zaidi days. I think he was with them up until this past year, and I've read some stuff that say that it was not a great time under his leadership, and I think part of that might have been that there hasn't been like a plan. The Giants do not have a plan. Like, what are they doing? They don't even know. And I think this might be the start of them trying to actually, like, consciously build a team. Like, I still feel like that run that they had in the early 2010s, that was, you know, the 10, 12, and 14, the World Series, it was kind of an accident. Like, they got this great team together. They had some great homegrown stars, and they signed what was Ryan Vogel's song. I remember him. He was like a huge reclamation story for them, and he cost them nothing. Like, a lot of that was luck in the way that a lot of World Series championships are luck. So I think now they might actually be trying to put together a plan that allows them to get better and progress the way a baseball team might want to. Now, as a person who hates the Giants, I don't like this. But knowing that Buster Posey is in charge makes me wonder whether they'll actually get there.
Well, if this is step one of let's contend with the Dodgers and Padres, they've still got a couple hundred more steps to go, so yeah, I'm not going to worry too much about it.
Nah.
But any of those moves, Justin, that any you want to mention? Tyler O'Neill, Conforto, Trinan, Adames?
Well, I guess the O'Neill one jumped out at me just because that was a name that Todd Zalecki mentioned earlier in the winter on a podcast as somebody who might be at least on the level of guy that the Phillies are looking at as far as this outfield back goes. But the thing about guys like Tyler O'Neill is that there's more than one guy like Tyler O'Neill. So it's not like, a off-season ruining move to see him sign with another team. It does make you wonder how long they're going to see guys come off the board, but not in a scared way, and more of just a curious way. I'm curious to see who and what kind of guy the Phillies are looking at to fill that role, because now, hey, one of them's gone, and they're not going to get more plentiful as time goes on.
I think their outfielder is absolutely coming over in a trade, because I thought O'Neill was the most likely free agent to come to Philadelphia. I don't think they're going to be willing to pay what the guys who lost out on Juan Soto are going to be willing to pay Teoscar Hernandez and Anthony Santander. I don't think they're going there, especially when you also have to give up a qualifying offer. I don't think the Phillies are going after Jerks and Profar and making a big offer for him. And I'm on their side on that if they're choosing not to do that. I just don't believe that Profar suddenly became, a power hitting selective superstar in his 30s. I'm not there. So there's not a whole lot else, outside the trade market. So I think that's one of the reasons we're hearing Dave Dombrowski say some of the things he's been saying about the offense. Like, if they're going to bring somebody else in that's got a significant impact, it's going to have to be through trades. And those are harder to pull off because you have to have something that another team needs and that they're willing to trade for you. I mean, we're hearing guys like Kyle Tucker's name out there. We're hearing Luis Robert Jr.'s name come back up around again. There's a number of different names that have surfaced, and they're all going to cost you a lot in terms of either prospects or they carry a lot of risk. So, there's a lot of balls in play here if the Phillies really do want to fix the outfield. And I thought O'Neill was a prime candidate to kind of give them something that they were looking for. And that is not going to happen. All right. Anything else on the winter meetings? No? All right. Dick Allen elected to the Hall of Fame, guys. This was a long overdue honor for the former Philly great. He received 13 votes. Dave Parker also this was the former Veterans Committee. I forget what they're calling it now. But Parker got 14 votes, Allen 13 votes. You needed a minimum of 12 of 16 votes necessary for induction. They will officially be inducted on July 27th, along with this year's group that's voted in via the Baseball Writers Association of America. Unfortunately, it didn't happen before Allen passed away in 2020. He had twice before fallen a single vote shy of induction while he was alive. But of course, we all know Dick Allen. We've been stumping for this for a number of years, as have many Phillies fans and Phillies broadcasters. A career .534 slugging percentage with 351 career homers, over 1,100 RBIs with the Phillies, Cardinals, Dodgers, White Sox, and A's. Won Rookie of the Year with the Phillies in 1964. Was a 7-time All-Star, twice led the American League in home runs, had a 155 weighted runs created for his career, which means for his career, he was 55% above average in terms of hitting compared to the league average. So, Liz, let me start with you. Dick Allen elected to the Hall of Fame. How we feeling?
Incredible. It's a long time coming. I've spent a couple of years profiling him on and off at Yahoo Sports. Some of those have been eaten by the internet. But I got to write a little bit about him yesterday. When he was elected, did a little bit of pre-writing. It's always a pleasure to write about him because every time I look him up, I find something different that I forgot, that I didn't know. His bio on the SABR website, sabr.org, they've got incredibly detailed, well-researched biographies on almost every player you can imagine. There's lots of fun stories and stuff about him missing curfew and the Phillies getting annoyed about it and using that as a reason, as the front end reason to treat him like crap. There's some great books written about him that I think everybody should read. And I'll mention this a little bit later, but I'm just so thrilled. This to me has been one of the most egregious overlooks of the Hall of Fame, and you could tell that either him or the writers really wanted him to be in, because this was the third time he was put up for election in the last decade. He is the favorite player of so many older Phillies fans that I know personally, and so many of them are happy to see him make it in. I'm like overjoyed. If you can, look up the video of his son and his grandson. And maybe his great-grandson. There were a lot of people there celebrating when they found out. And it was so emotional and lovely. He's had so many great things written about him by his former White Sox teammates. Mike Schmidt considered him a mentor. Mike Schmidt.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I'm going to mention this a little bit more on Wednesday, but I got an advanced look at the Mike Schmidt documentary, and one of the things in the documentary is when Dick Allen came back to the Phillies in Mike Schmidt's career, he really helped Schmidt along in, I think it was 1976, during the 1976 season. It really helped motivate him and helped try and get him to take the game a little bit more lightly, a little bit more fun and stuff like that. So yeah. There's a cool story in the Schmidt documentary about Dick Allen, which was apropos given everything that's going on. So, Justin, what do you think?
I think Schmidt was part of the contingent of Phillies players who came to his house in Wampum and talked to him about coming back to the Phillies before he made that return. I think he was like, yeah, we had a keg of beer and talked about it. So I assume it became a more appealing notion as the evening went on. But yeah, I mean, in my mind, Dick Allen's been in the Hall of Fame for so long at this point, and it was kind of tough not to just feel a twinge of anger and move on, in that there's not a good reason that he wasn't in before now. And there's just not a good one, and it should have happened before he died, and that that you got it done a couple years after he died so his family can be happy. Okay. But don't be patting yourself on the back, because you blew it. You blew this for so long before now. But I won't take this moment and turn it into a cloud of cynicism, because it is good news. It's great that it happened. Dick Allen is one of the most important baseball players in Philadelphia history, because to me, one of the reasons he is such a fascinating player to read about and learn about is that he was one of these athletes that made the city kind of look at itself and see all of its ugliness and have to come to terms with that. And a lot of people just didn't, because a lot of people in that situation just don't and refuse to do it. But it was a moment of reckoning for Philadelphia in a lot of ways, and he kind of forced that. Not very few players have the kind of personality and wound up in the situations that he wound up in that allowed for that kind of education of Philadelphia to occur. And I think that makes him so important, and just a really, like Liz said, a fascinating person to read about. And I always recommend his autobiography. I can see it on the shelf above me, Crash. That is one of the best baseball books. As someone who prefers memoirs as far as subgenres of baseball books, that's one of the best. And definitely one that's a great window into his head and what he was thinking at different times throughout his career, which again was pretty tumultuous at certain moments. So yeah, I think this is obviously well deserved and overdue, and it's fantastic that it happened, but it's way too late.
Well, I know there's video of his family celebrating, so you're right. Every point you made is 100% correct. But it is it's good that he's in there now, and Phillies fans, there'll be a contingent heading to Cooperstown in New York this summer to witness that induction in what did I say? It was July. Doesn't matter. I don't remember exactly when it was. July 27th up in Cooperstown. All right, let's finish up the podcast here with some final thoughts. Justin, final thoughts. Throw them at us.
Well, given that we've spent months talking about Juan Soto, I feel like we did not talk a lot about Juan Soto. So I'll just add a couple of things, and this was just reactions to the news itself. And one is Buster Olney and Jeff Passan. You guys, they laughed their butts off at this deal. They were mocking the Mets. They were acting like, they were saying things like, oh, the Yankees, they wanted to win the negotiations, but then when people saw what they had offered and what the Mets paid, then they were like, wow, you're in some ways probably glad that he didn't come to your team. They said it was a bad baseball deal. Like they were not holding back, which was really interesting because for the first 24 hours of this deal going down, all I saw was like Mets fans being really excited, which I think is the only true reaction at this point in a 15-year deal. You're going to be excited because, again, the numbers in play are the numbers that brought him here, and all you care is that he's here. Right. You're not thinking about the future and what about the future of the Mets right field defense and all that. But it was wild to see two of the biggest national writers kind of feasting on this and mocking the Mets. So you're like, oh, I don't know. It just feels like any other team in that situation would be getting lauded. If the Yankees had gotten him, they would have been lauded for what they had done. So that was also very funny. The other one was, why did ESPN put together the baseball commentary super team of Shannon Sharp and Rex Ryan to talk about the Juan Soto deal on First Take, on a show on which Rex Ryan offered no insight other than the Major League Baseball Players Association definitely forced Juan Soto to accept this deal, which is so funny that you would have to, at gunpoint, force someone to accept $765 million. Poor Juan Soto if this happened. All those players standing around the desk just giving them mean mugging at him like, you better sign that deal. Okay, guys, I just wanted to play for free, but all right, $765 million. Like, get out of here. Like that was the funniest one I saw, I think, as far as reactions to Juan Soto.
I missed that. I missed that, I must say. I did see the Buster Olney Jeff Passan thing, but I missed Rex Ryan's rant. Liz, final thoughts from you.
I'm just going to throw out a few more fun Dick Allen facts. Did you know that he swung a 40-ounce bat, which is like 2.5 pounds? I'm sure you guys did know, but he swung a bat that is probably heavier than I could pick up with one hand. Let's see. When he played for the Cardinals and he went back to the Phillies to play, he wrote boo in the infield dirt when the Phillies fans booed him. That is the thing that I love.
He would write little messages to them, like they would change. He would write different things sometimes. Yeah.
Yes. Dick Allen, 2 books that you should read. One of them is by, William Cashdaus, with a foreword by Mike Schmidt. Dick Allen, The Life and Times of a Baseball Immortal. And one that was recommended by Jay Jaffe, who to me is the word on the Hall of Fame. It's called God Almighty Hisself, The Life and Legacy of Dick Allen by Mitchell Nathanson. I haven't read it. It is now on my list. I'm really excited to read it. And I just want to float one thing to everybody. One thing that I hadn't thought of until this moment was, how does he go into the Hall of Fame? Now, this will be something for his kids, I'm going to guess, at least his son and his family to decide. Does he go in as the young, clean-shaven player with that Phillies hat with the little curly P? Or does he go in as the ultimate badass with those enormous mutton chop sideburns and the Fu Manchu, the big glasses, and that those immortal White Sox jerseys, which are gorgeous? I don't know. It's real tough.
His son was wearing a Phillies hat.
Yes, he was.
My guess is he goes in. What I'd like to see was, mix it up. Go with the mutton chops and the glasses, but do it in the Phillies hat. Then that's the best of both worlds. Although I don't know, it doesn't.
It's tough to mix and match, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if you can.
Canonically, it doesn't work, but spiritually, I think it does.
I've got a powder blue throwback with Ashburn's name on it. You can do whatever you want.
we can do whatever we want. We can do whatever. Yes. It's the 21st century. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this edition of Hittin' Season. If there are any more big moves this week, we'll come at you, some combination of us. We'll come at you with emergency pods as necessary. I'll have a midweek podcast for you, so I'll catch up on some winter meeting stuff in the middle of the week, and then Justin and Liz have you covered at the end of the week. But in case something big happens, we won't depart from you. We'll give you some podcast stuff for your ears. In the meantime, I want to make sure you check out our landing page over with our content partners at Billy Penn. BillyPenn.com/Hittin Season. Want to encourage you to check out The Dirty Inning and Absolutely Hammered over at the Hittin Season Patreon. That's patreon.com/Hittin Season. And of course, you can read all of Liz's great work at Yahoo Sports. Read Justin at Baseball Prospectus and Billy Penn, and my stuff at The Good Fight and Billy Penn as well. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time right here on Hittin Season.